I tried dating apps in my early 50s. It was an absolute disaster. And I don't say that dramatically, I mean genuinely confusing. Because by this stage of life, you're usually building something quite stable, your own home, your own routines, your own money, your own peace. Then suddenly you're trying to work out where another person fits into that. And the uncomfortable truth is this: many women in their 50s and 60s realize they don't actually want the relationship structure they spent decades being told they should want. When we talk about dating in your 60s, the conversation usually sounds very optimistic. People say things like, "You're never too old to find love. This could be the best chapter yet. There are so many people out there." And technically, that's true. But the reality of dating at this stage is very different from dating earlier in life. Because everyone arrives with history, divorces, financial arrangements, adult children, homes, care responsibilities, habits that have been in place for decades. You're not building a life together from scratch anymore. You're trying to work out whether two already built lives can sit alongside each other. And that is much harder than people admit. I did try the apps. This was a few years ago now. And honestly, I found the whole thing slightly surreal. You're looking at profiles, trying to decide whether you want to meet someone based on three photos and two sentences. At 25, that probably made sense. At 60, it feels a bit ridiculous because by this stage, you know that what matters isn't hobbies or holidays, it's character, it's emotional maturity, it's how someone handles disappointment, it's whether they take responsibility for their own life. And none of that shows up in a profile. But there's another piece that people don't talk about very openly. Many women reach their 50s or 60s and finally have something they didn't have earlier in life: independence. You might live on your own, you run your own household, you decide how your money is spent. Your day belongs to you. That's not a small thing. It took decades to build that. And dating sometimes quietly asks you to give pieces of that up again. Not intentionally, but structurally. Because traditional relationships still tend to carry traditional expectations. Cooking, compromise around routines, emotional labour, negotiating time. All the things women have historically done more of. And some women reach this stage of life and simply think, "I don't want to go back to that structure." What I notice around me when I talk to women my age, I hear a similar pattern again and again. They're open to companionship. They enjoy meeting people, but they are much less willing to reshape their lives around someone else. They've done that already, often for decades. And once you've built a peaceful life that works for you, the question becomes very practical. Does another relationship actually improve this life? Or does it complicate it? That's not cynicism, that's clarity. Here's the practical consequence of all of this. A lot of women quietly stop dating, not because they couldn't find someone, but because the available relationship model doesn't feel attractive anymore. They don't want to move in with someone. They don't want to merge finances. They don't want to start negotiating household roles again. They might be perfectly open to companionship, but they're not interested in repeating old relationship patterns. And that changes how dating works. There's also another side to this. Sometimes you simply don't meet someone, and that's the honest truth. I haven't. Maybe it's timing, maybe it's circumstances, maybe it's the vibe I give off, although I think I'm quite lovely. But life doesn't always deliver the things we imagine it might. And that's okay too. Because the real question isn't, have you found someone? The real question is, have you built a life that still works if you don't? I think what's actually happening for many women in their 50s and 60s is this. They stop structuring their lives around the assumption that a relationship is the end goal. They start structuring their lives around stability, independence, and peace. If someone comes along who fits naturally into that life, wonderful. But if they don't, the life is still good. And that's quite a radical shift compared to earlier generations. Dating in your 60s isn't just about finding a partner. It's about deciding what kind of life you want now and whether a relationship actually fits into that life. For some women, the answer is yes. For others, the answer is maybe. And for quite a few, the answer is I'm actually fine as I am. One thing I've noticed through second bloom conversations is that many women reach this stage of life and start reassessing several parts of their lives at the same time: work, health, friendships, relationships, direction. Sometimes writing things down and working through those questions properly can bring a lot of clarity. Not because there's a right answer, but because midlife is often when we finally start asking the questions honestly. What do you want in your life? I'd love to hear.